Good evening and welcome to the Coeur d'Alene City Council meeting for July 2nd, 2024. I'll call this meeting to order and note that all council are present. The invocation tonight is by Grant McLean of Trinity Lutheran Church. Grant, welcome and thank you for coming tonight. If you wish to stand, please do so.
Thank you, Lord. Thank you that you're with us, whether we ask for your presence or take it for granted or even run from it. Thank you for the ways that you've guided those who have gone before us, those who have lived out your calling in difficult times, especially in the drafting and adopting and proclamation of the Declaration of Independence 248 years ago. Thank you for those in this room who work in these difficult times to debate and adopt and enforce the dignity and interdependence with which we live our lives together in Coeur d'Alene. Thank you for Jim Hammond, for Christy Wood, for Amy Evans and Dan Gookin, and Woody McEvers and Dan English and Kiki Miller, who continue to contribute their particular gifts to the service of this community. May their hearts be stirred, their wisdom shared, and their action clarified for the accomplishment of our common vision, the achievement of a welcoming and high quality of life, and good stewardship of our combined resources through all the proceedings of this meeting. It is in your name that we ask it. Amen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now, Dan, would you please lead us in the pledge? Dan Gookin?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we move on to amendments, I would like to share a moment regarding a former mayor who passed away recently. This mayor and council would like to share our deepest condolences to the family of James R. Fromm. He served as the city's mayor from 1982 to 1986. It is my understanding that he has lived in Coeur d'Alene since he was 12 years old, and he so loved Coeur d'Alene that even though he worked in Kellogg, he chose to live here and commute. He has been married to his lovely wife, Lisa, for 38 years. Is Lisa here? Hi, Lisa. Thank you for coming tonight. And has 3 children, to which we express our sincere thank you for sharing Mayor Fromm with us and for his service. And we again express our deepest condolences for his loss. Thank you. Amendments to the agenda. Dan, you had something?
I'm going to pull an item off the consent calendar for separate consideration, and I will. Should I do that now? Or do you want me to do that with a motion? I'm just going to pull off item number G3C for separate discussion, Mr. Mayor.
Make that in the form of a motion, please.
Move to remove item G3C from the consent calendar for separate consideration.
Is there a second?
I'll second it for discussion.
We have a second from the motion. Discussion on the motion.
Just to make sure the poet laureate program.
Mr. Mayor, I was always under the impression that any council person could pull any item off the consent calendar and it did not require approval of the body.
That's true, but I wanted to get their consensus, so,
Can't we get their consensus when we discuss the issue?
well, I guess so.
Thank you.
All right, we'll skip the motion, and we'll just move forward with pulling that from the agenda, and we'll take that up later in the agenda. You have to remember.
I won't forget.
Any announcements from the council?
Mr. Mayor?
Kiki?
I just
No, you don't have an announcement
I
tonight, do
know.
you?
I like to let you guys know what I'm doing. I know. In my housing lane, as you know, I'm still and passionate about that, but I have been attending a couple meetings, and I'm going to stay with it, that Panhandle Area Council is putting together, that our community outreach sessions in order to create their CEDS report, which is a Community Economic Development Strategy, and that's required by the Economic Development Administration. And it's really important to our community. I think we all kind of forget about it, but it's one thing that a lot of our nonprofits and cities rely on that report because it's a vision of what the strengths and weaknesses and directions that our community is taking in order to remain economically viable. So how that ties back to my housing is the rankings are not done yet, but the housing crisis that we all face is kind of rising to the number one threat for economic stability. I'll tell you that lack of supportive education and racial intolerance are in the top few, and those three have not been there in the past. So that report will be out. It will be available under the Panhandle Area Council website in January, and I will keep you posted of any other changes.
Thank you. Dan?
Sure. Just that this Saturday, this will be the last time I'll be announcing our 6-week discussion series, the after party on having civil discussions between people of different religious or political viewpoints. And we've had over 50 people attend one or more meetings. I see at least a couple of faces that have been there, so I appreciate that. And after this Saturday, I won't make this announcement anymore. But hopefully still be civil. So.
Anything else? Very well. Then we'll move on to public comments. And I want to remind you, as you heard earlier, public comments are limited to 3 minutes. There is a time clock over here that will beep at the end of your 3 minutes. And in fairness to everyone who wishes to share comments, I ask you to stop at the end of your 3 minutes, please. Okay. I will open public comment, and the first person signed up is Tony Stewart.
Mayor Hammond and City Council, I'm here representing the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations Board in support of your proposed hate crime city ordinance. Mayor Hammond, thank you for your leadership on this issue. We recently have experienced an epidemic of vicious verbal abuse of people of color in our city that have included the Utah women's basketball team, young people of the Coeur tribe, a high school music group from southern Idaho, a mother driving into an elementary school to pick up her child, and minority students from out-of-state soccer team. And today I learned that they were from Nelson, Canada, and they have reported to the police. This behavior must end. We are appalled at the suggestion that constitutionally protected hate speech can cross that line to say one can vocally berate, bully, intimidate, harass, and demand that victims leave our beautiful city and never to return. Let me be clear, this must stop. This proposed city ordinance will greatly help in that effort. The FBI and the Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism both have alarming data of recent rise of hate crimes in our country, and especially in American cities. 49 states and territories, including Idaho, have hate crime legislation at this time. Let's join cities across America who are taking a stance against hate with the passage of hate crime city ordinances. For example, 15 cities in South Carolina have passed such ordinance, with Summerville and North Charleston being the latest to do that. In Fargo, North Dakota, the hate crime city ordinance defines criminal mischief, harassment, and simple assault unlawful in that city. There is no question that the recent incidents in Coeur d'Alene certainly have been harassment. And such behavior can leave permanent emotional harm to the victims. For 44 years, I've listened to victims, and the impact on them emotionally can last for the rest of their life. There is no question that the recent incidents in Coeur d'Alene meet this ordinance to be helpful. We must be a compassionate and a loving people. Let me close by calling on all our good citizens to speak out and condemn this horrific behavior by quoting Washington Post columnist Kathleen Parker, in her column on April 17th, 2010. I quote, "When we choose to remain silent, consider yourself complicit in whatever transpires." And I think that we should not remain silent. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Shelley Ray Phillips. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. I'll be very brief. Thank you for having this and for bringing the ordinance for us to the city. I really think it's important that we make some statement that we're not okay with what's happening, and I feel like this is the first step. So, thank you.
Thank you. Ralph Gennaro. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Esteemed elected officials, I have an easy job tonight. I speak in defense of free speech, the First Amendment, on the anniversary of Independence Day, to a council that's contemplating the introduction of the concept of thought crime into our local ordinances. Ladies and gentlemen, you're elected to do a certain job. That job is not to monitor the consciences of your citizens. In taking on the stance that it is not merely action which is the province of the law, but intent before any action takes place, you are joining totalitarians and theocrats around the world in deciding yourself what constitutes acceptable from unacceptable speech, and there is no difference between speech and thought. That is why it is the First Amendment to the Constitution. Because we cannot conceive of thought in our minds without words. I have no problem. In fact, I think it's a basic function of the law to look at the motives of a person who acts in a criminal fashion. But to say that the motivation itself will now be criminal is to step away from laws from Hammurabi's time to now, from measuring objective behavior to trying to discern what lies in the hearts and minds of human beings, which is not something I think any of us have the capacity to do. I come from a family that was split because my dad's Cuban Puerto Rican, and I grew up around New York City at a time when that mattered. I know firsthand the ravages of racism. I know what it's like to have somebody say of my sister, "Who is this dark person in my living room?" which one of her friend's fathers said. I understand what it's like to walk into a public place and wonder if somebody has noticed me as something other than what they are. I'll stand with anyone that wants to punish bigoted action. But to constrain speech is to take on a role that you were not elected for. And with all due respect, this community can forgive and forget the good intentions of you as you go about your righteous business of deciding zoning issues and city policy. But this community will not long forget you crossing a line and deciding what is and is not acceptable speech and thought. That's been done in Europe, and people have been thrown in jail for being Holocaust deniers. Holocaust happened. Nobody should be thrown in jail for being an idiot. Thank you.
Thank you. Betsy Kovac.
Hi, I'm Betsy Kovac. I'm the Vice President of PFLAG Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai County. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting, educating, and advocating for LGBTQIA+ people and their families throughout Coeur d'Alene and Kootenai County. I'm here to speak in support of adopting Chapter 923 to the Coeur d'Alene Municipal Code. The hate crime ordinance is a strong step in the right direction toward making Coeur d'Alene safe for all people to live, recreate, or visit our city without fear of harassment, intimidation, and violence towards them because of their skin color, sexual orientation, gender identity, nation or perceived nation of origin, or any mental or physical disability. I've seen the discrimination and intimidation and violence directed towards the LGBTQIA+ people escalate over the last few years. The fear of harassment or violence directed towards them and other marginalized individuals is real. Whether they're walking through the grocery store parking lot, picking up lunch downtown, or going out to dinner with friends. The safety of many people and families in this community have been negatively impacted by these incidents, and the helpless feeling that comes with no ability to have legal recourse against those committing these heinous acts only victimizes them over again. I see so much good in this community, and I know that there are more caring and just people in Coeur d'Alene than what has been displayed in public recently. My hope is that this ordinance will send a strong message and hold accountable those who continue to use their time and energy to make others feel intimidated and unsafe here in our town. In closing, I would ask that you please support this very important and impactful ordinance against hate crime so everyone can feel safe in a more welcoming and inclusive Coeur d'Alene. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jeanette Lester?
Good evening, Mayor Hammond, City Council members, city staff, and community members. My name is Jeanette Lester, and I am the Executive Director of the Human Rights Education Institute. Most of us realize that hate crimes are crimes of the ignorant. However, it doesn't make them any less harmful or traumatic. They take many forms, from harassment to symbolic graffiti to phone calls or letters, and can accelerate quickly to physical assault, extreme violence, bombings, and even homicide, all of which we have seen here in our beautiful town of Coeur d'Alene. The intention is to malign a person's identity, strike fear in a particular protected class, and threaten to intimidate a group or individual from their own freedoms. I recently presented before you the amount of hate incidences that have been increasing in reporting in 2023. Why do we track? Consistent, accurate data collection about hate incidences or crime is vital for understanding the scope of violence, trends over time, and what measures are effective or ineffective in combating hate crime. Currently, 30 states and D.C. have laws requiring some degree of state-based data collection about hate crimes. Idaho is one of 4 states that requires hate crime data collection but does not mention crimes based on sexual orientation or gender identity. Data that I have reported here annually has shown we have a growing issue, and with the greatest respect, there is no more room for tolerance. Why do we not see this translate into our low rate of hate crimes? I believe this was answered in our recent Juneteenth Community Leadership Panel. Thank you, Councilmember Wood, for participating on the panel. When we discussed the need for more accurate reporting, and one of the panelists of the protected class stated, and I am paraphrasing, "Why would I report if I don't feel like anything will be done, or that our leadership does not have the resources, tools, or ability to prosecute?" Hate crime laws rely on law enforcement to be enabled and specifically trained for responses to hate incidences and provide victims with resources no matter what level of assault is. Hate crime laws create additional or enhanced penalties for crimes committed with bias towards particular characteristics, giving victims some kind of justice and offer offenders a chance to reform and rehabilitate. Today, I spoke before Girl Scout Troop 208 out of Spokane. We are having a conversation around what it means to be an upstander. When asked what that meant, Olivia proudly replied, "Saying sorry is not enough. It is our actions that matter." And they talked about strength and courage and respect for others being an essential part of the Girl Scout law. At HREI, we make actionable commitments to the communities we serve, all of which are listed on our website. At the top of that list is fighting for equality for all. Racism silences the voices of so many. For all those victims who sit in fearful silence, I stand before you on behalf of my board of directors and the members of the Human Rights Consortium in support of these ordinances and ask council to be their strength, encourage, and be an upstander. Adopt this chapter and use these ordinances to send a clear message that these victims matter. Thank you.
Thank you. What do you think? It's M-A-R, and we're not sure the last letter, and then an M to start
Okay,
from
here we
Post
go.
Falls.
You got one, okay.
Please give us your name.
Marty, Post Falls.
Okay?
I'm retired. I was a parole and probation officer for 30 years. I worked in the state penitentiary in Baltimore for 6 years. I worked in a state penitentiary in Florida, Central Florida, for 3 years. You want to know what hate is? I'll tell you what hate is. Have you ever heard of a knockout game? black folks seeing who they can beat the hell out of with one punch. Have you ever heard of that? Knockout game? In fact, they call it polar bear hunting. Polar bear hunting, which means that they're seeking out assaults on white people. Polar bear hunting. If you're in the hood, you know that. If you've never been in the hood, if you've never worked in the hood, you would assume that every single person who hates looks like me. That ain't true. And you're being played, and we're being played. I asked a senior prosecuting attorney in the King County area in Washington, I said, how many prosecutions, how many hate crime prosecutions can you recall in which a white person was the victim? He said, 1. 25 years. One white person was a victim. Every single one of these knockout games that blacks are doing is a hate crime, but you never see it in the stats. Now, to quote Saul Alinsky, the Marxist, the issue is never the issue. Hate is not the issue here. This is what anybody heard? Saul Alinsky, the Marxist, Rules for Radicals. His favorite student was Obama. The issue was never the issue. Hate is not the issue here. The issue here is penalizing straight, white, Christian, conservative males for their freedom of speech. How on earth in Seattle do you have one prosecution of hate in 25 years involving a white person? Has anybody ever heard the Federal Department of Justice filing a civil rights violation involving a black assaulting a white person? I have never seen it. Civil rights in this country never applies to white people. Everybody knows it. There is not, if you can name me one civil rights violation prosecution of a black person who has assaulted a white person because they're white. Polar bear hunting, like I said. If you've never worked in the hood, you don't know what real hatred is. I have seen it up close. Targeting white people for murder, rape. If you've never worked in a city, you don't understand it. This is all, you're all sheltered here. Hate, I have seen real hate. I'm talking about murder, rape, and aggravated assault. You want hate? Coeur d'Alene people don't know what hate is. I've seen it.
Marty, before you go, how do you spell your last name?
Modance.
Thank you. Taylor Davis.
Hey, Mayor Council, how are you? Wanted to address the council tonight, not about the hate stuff going on, but thank you for doing that. About a breach of contract that apparently we are under. I do Live After 5 in Coeur d'Alene, have been for the last 12 years. We signed a new contract last year. The reason of the breach of contract that's been stated is we didn't pay fees 30 days in advance, which, the history will show that we've never actually done that. In fact, case in point, last year, we paid the day before our event started. Canceling Live After 5 would be a major blow to the city. I helped build this in other cities prior to moving here. I've invested over $350,000 of my own money in the last 12 years building this thing. Donated over $125,000 to local nonprofits. It's a good city event. It generates well over 2,000 people downtown on Wednesdays. The economic impact could be argued far greater than any other event single-handedly that goes on in Coeur d'Alene. The community loves it, embraces it, looks forward to it annually. I'll be the first to admit that it's structured incorrectly. Because we operate 13 days a year, we can't scale it. We can't hire a staff. We can't, so as a result, I juggle 15 to 20 hats on my head, trying to do this independent. The city of Boise, for example, throws $400,000 annually into their Alive After Fives, and I know that because I helped build it. The Arts Commission, the Arts Council, the Arts and Culture Alliance, I've been a part of those. I've talked to the Downtown Association. This event needs to be a nonprofit, but by canceling this event prematurely and for no cause is really only going to harm the city. It's going to harm the community by not having to go on. But more importantly, it's going to harm the vendors and sponsors that have already signed up for this event. If you guys want to hold me to a 30-day notice, which again is the first time this ever happened, then here's your notice. We'll start the first week of August and we'll go through middle of September and do a rebuilding here. But we're not in breach of contract. I've done over 200 events, concerts in this city. Never once had a violation. It's been a great thing for the city, but I'll be the first to tell you, it needs to be a nonprofit. That's the only way it can scale, it's the only way it can build. So I wanted to be here publicly to address you, let you know, let the community know as well, because we get inundated with a bunch of phone calls and when's the start date? And, I asked to be on the agenda. I actually asked to meet with these two gentlemen last week before I went and buried my father last week. They were unavailable. Asked to be a part of this agenda as well, but that was denied. So, if we need to schedule this for the next city council meeting, I'd like to be a part of that to give you the full broad picture of what actually is going on and how we can build and save this, because it is a community asset, guys, and you guys need to realize that. So, anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Taylor.
And thank you for the hate stuff.
Bill Green?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and esteemed council members. Thank you very much for the time you provide for public comment, and thank you for your service. I know this is a lot of time you put into these things. And I was thinking on the way down here that you were probably thinking about what's going to happen tonight and what you might say about this particular issue about the ordinance for hate crimes. And I was thinking that everything begins with a thought. The great things that have been built, bridges and architecture and musical concerts, great symphonies, artwork, philosophy, education, everything that you can think of that goes into our society that has positive effects and benefits begins with a thought. And somebody had a thought and they thought it was a good thing to try to do, and they put it into action and they brought forth a product that enhanced the society and the well-being of all the people around them. And there are also thoughts that start out with not maybe such a good intent and end up in actions that are more destructive, or at least appear that way. And I guess I'm here to kind of look at this from a different kind of perspective, in that the values that Coeur d'Alene has espoused, I grew up here, I came here when I was 2, so I've seen a lot of different things, a lot of different people, and the values that people come here for, community, neighborhood, the ambiance of the lake, the trees, the mountains, the kind of good-natured happiness. And a lot of people comment on how friendly people are here. And I've even noticed over the years that whenever there was someone that got in trouble, their house burned down, or some tragedy hit their family, whether it be medical or psychological or mental, a lot of the neighbors all gathered around them and provided tons of support. And they're super grateful, and it's evident that there's a spirit of giving and hospitality and love and support that exists in Coeur d'Alene and Seoul North Idaho area, because I've seen that over all these years. And there are also these little things that happen in the side where someone says something nasty to somebody, and I was thinking about that too. So what's that in terms of thinking? Whenever people try to hurt someone else, and they disparage them, they demean them, they try to make them feel less than worthy, somehow not a good person, they're really talking more about themselves. They're saying nasty things about somebody else, mainly because they're feeling nasty things about themselves, and they don't even know it. But it's often a chance to help people realize that we're all us. There are no differences. We're all siblings. We all have the same mother, father in the end. And this idea that there's somebody less than me or better than me that makes me feel down and I got to make them feel down, it's all a circle that goes nowhere. And I think in Coeur d'Alene, what's really would be cool is that the citizens respond in a different way. If they see somebody harassing somebody or saying something mean, they know by example that they can cut that off. It's the way we live and recognize each other that will make the biggest difference of all. And that's what will change this culture if it needs changing. And you can make a new rule, but the complexity of enforcing it's going to be really a challenge. There's so many ambiances of what hate means and what it means to try to hurt somebody. Anyway, sorry for going over.
Thank you.
Thanks again for your time and your effort and all your service.
Dean Haggison? Welcome, Dean.
Good evening, Mayor Hammond, members of the council. You will see soon that I'm not nearly as eloquent as Professor Giannario, but I am here to urge you to reject the Council Bill 24-1010, creating a new category of hate crime and or hate speech. The proposal is obviously a reaction to recent incidents of rude and despicable behavior which occurred in our community. They are and should be condemned. The proposed bill amounts to value signaling. It may make one feel good. However, it is very dangerous. Limiting speech by making it a crime threatens our one essential right, the right to free speech. If that right is not absolute, it does not exist. Without that right, our other rights are meaningless. So, please resist the temptation to, quote, do something. By the way, bringing this forward has the effect of reinforcing the opinion of some that we really must be racist. I'm reminded of Richard Nixon's famous statement, "I'm not a crook."
Thank you. Chief Allen. Welcome, Chief.
Thank you, guys, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Thank you so much for having me here today. I want to start off by saying I am a taxpayer in Kootenai County. You guys will probably get that question because they're going to say, "Why are you having him testify? He's not a citizen." Trust me, I've been around 30 years. I know every game in the book, what everybody throws out. I actually pay Kootenai County tax at 2 houses, so it's just something for you guys when you guys get bombarded. I'm elected a leader. I get bombarded with all kinds of questions all the time, and so I just wanted to put that on the forefront. I wanted to say thank you guys for this. This is 2024. And I wasn't so much mad and angry. I was embarrassed. I'm embarrassed as a citizen of this country that we are still living in this, and we still have to deal with this kind of stuff. I thought this stuff was done and passed, and past us. Indian people have always stood up for our country and for our rights. My dad was a Marine. He served in Vietnam. My uncle was a Marine. He served in Vietnam. My chairman, that I still call chairman, served in Vietnam. Ernie Stansgar, our other council member, Don Szynski, served in Vietnam. My grandfather served in the Korean War. I mean, we talk about anniversaries, and the 100th anniversary of us becoming citizens of this country in 1924. Our people stood up and fought for this country for these rights. And let's not embarrass their memory and why they fought. They fought for this country, and they fought for not to say, "Hey, Indian, go home," and freedom of speech. They fought for our country to dispel bullies, and that's what this was. It was a bully tactic, and I love our veterans. I love our Indian people. Our Indian people have always stood up. I got classmates that been in the service for 40 years, and they do it because they love this country. So I kind of wanted to put that out there, and I kind of wanted to leave everybody that I love everybody, man. This is the greatest country on the earth and sometimes we have to do things that we may not want to, but we have to do it to protect our people. And it's not about, trying to smother somebody's, thoughts or their opinions or whatever, but we just need to do it to, or how are we going to enforce it? People always say, how are we going to enforce, speed limits? Does everybody speed? When the cops are not around, it's the same thing. We do it to prevent it, and this is what we're going to do to prevent it. And I want to leave everybody with this last quote. It's a Bible quote. It's from Proverbs 18-21. And when this happened, I called for all of our church leaders to step up, and we need to, Indian people are very spiritual. We really believe in the Creator. We believe in the big guy upstairs. And Proverbs 18-21 says, "Be careful what you say, because your tongue it either can give you life or give you death." And so we got to be careful of that. If you look in the Bible, there are so many, all kinds of quotes about holding your tongue. And so I just say we need to hold our tongue, and it's a shame that we can't, like I said, this is 2024. Let's get past that. Again, thank you guys so much. I know it's a tough situation, but just know that the tribe is always there, and we're part of this community, and we will do whatever we can to be part of this community. Thank you guys.
Chief, before you go, you and the members of your tribe have always been wonderful neighbors and good friends to the city of Coeur d'Alene, and you're always welcome here.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we appreciate your opinions and your wisdom. Thank you.
This is our home, and this is all of our homes, and we got to protect it. And let's send out those people away and say, hey, man, we don't want that here.
Thank you.
This is a great area. Thank you.
Hilo Hancock. Welcome.
Thank you. Chief's a tough act to follow. Mayor Hammond, members of the City Council, it's a pleasure to be here and speak in favor of the hate crimes ordinance, the Council Bill 24-1010 this evening. I stand before you not only as a concerned citizen of the city of Coeur d'Alene, I've lived here for almost 20 years here in town, but also as a concerned friend and family member of a lot of people who have been subjected to racial discrimination. As a white male, I think it's easy to say racism isn't a problem here. Nobody's ever treated me differently based on the color of my skin or called me a racial slur. So this is just an isolated incident. Look the other way. It's not really a problem. But racism and discrimination is real. Many years ago, early in my career as an attorney working for the Coeur d'Alene tribe, I think I was maybe a couple months on the job, and I had a tribal member come into my office very upset, distraught. And she told me about being refused service at a restaurant just outside the reservation boundaries and told, we don't serve your kind here. And I remember sitting there in disbelief, thinking, what decade did I transport back in time to? It is real. It does happen. You heard from Chief. We've seen what happened with the University of Utah women's team. We've seen what happened with tribal students. Tony talked about other incidents. It is real, and it is hurtful. It's no secret North Idaho has a bit of a stain based on a past of discrimination. And this blemish, unfortunately, on our reputation, deprives businesses of revenue. It deprives businesses of a diverse workforce. And those things cost our community. This is an opportunity to stand up to discrimination, stand up to hate. And I think it's great the City Council is taking it up. It reminds me the opportunity we have of the words of the famous Holocaust survivor and Nobel Peace Prize winner Elie Wiesel, who said, "We must take sides. Neutrality only helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence only encourages the tormentor, never the tormented." I commend the City Council, again, for the opportunity to take a side on this, to not be neutral, to not be silent. And I hope to see the larger community rally behind this. We all have to come together. This isn't just a city council or a police problem. Businesses, residents alike have to come together. And I hope this can be the tip of of the proverbial spear in that regard. So thank you, and I urge you to support this ordinance. Thanks.
Thank you. Linda Coppice?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council members. As you know, my name is Linda Coppice, and I'm the President and CEO of the Coeur d'Alene Regional Chamber. However, tonight I stand here before you as a concerned citizen and resident of Coeur d'Alene. I was born here back in 1969 at Kootenai Memorial Center, so I've seen lots happen in our community over the years. I'm here to thank you for the action that you have taken to amend Coeur d'Alene Municipal Code to add an ordinance on hate crime. I'm deeply grateful for your leadership and your commitment to fighting racism and discrimination in Coeur d'Alene. I was in high school in the mid to late 1980s when the atrocious hate incidents were brought on by the Aryan nations. I was present at the 1986 Human Rights Rally in City Park, where with great resolve our community showed up to say enough is enough. It took nearly 2 decades and the entire community to combat the issue back then. In the past 5 years since I've returned home from my time in Seattle, I've noticed hate rearing its ugly head again. And it seems to be escalating, with too many incidents happening to visitors and residents alike. I keep wondering how many more instances of harassment must valued members of our human race endure before we unite and firmly declare once again that enough is enough. For 24 years through my previous job at Microsoft and my service through my church in Seattle, I was blessed to travel all over the world. I have wonderful friends from many different countries, races, backgrounds, faiths, and beliefs. They are God's children too. The people I met became cherished friends and continue to be highlight of my years away from home. And it breaks my heart to think that many won't come here to our beautiful city for fear of their safety. And like Chief mentioned, I cannot understand how it's 2024 and we're still having this conversation. I'm here tonight to profess my deepest gratitude to you, to our city council members, our mayor, our attorneys, our administrator, partners, and all who are taking necessary steps to ensure that all people are welcome and treated with respect in our beautiful community. To each of you, I thank you for your leadership. My hope is that this ordinance is just the beginning, and that we will once again see our entire community join together to combat racism and other forms of oppression and create a community that fosters inclusivity, kindness, and respect for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jody Henbrand? Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Hammond and members of the City Council. My name is Jody Hiltonbrand, and I stand humbly before you as the president of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations. On behalf of the task force, I thank you for proposing a new chapter and encourage you to vote yes to add this new chapter to the Coeur d'Alene Municipal Code to create a separate offense if a person commits an offense such as malicious injury to property and disorderly conduct because of a victim's actual or perceived race, color, creed, religion, ancestry, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, physical or mental disability, or national origin. I commend the city on 2 grounds. First, city officials have not been silent in the wake of hateful incidents in our beautiful community during the past few months. Anyone who lives here or visits here should feel safe to do so. I appreciate that you have stood up to acknowledge that it is not okay for people enjoying our town, whether they be citizens native to this land or guests visiting from out of state or folks who live and work here, to suffer through harassment related to the aforementioned traits. Second, we know that actions speak louder than words. Today's proposal and my hope for its subsequent passage will further testify to our community and its guests that our words and support are embedded in the code of Coeur d'Alene. Senator Cory Booker said, "Don't speak to me about your religion, first show it to me in how you treat other people. Don't tell me how much you love your God, Show me in how much you love all of God's children. Don't preach to me your passion for your faith. Teach me through your compassion for your neighbors. In the end, I'm not as interested in what you have to tell or sell me as I am in how you choose to live and give. Let's choose safety for our citizens and guests. Do not let some of the loud, I would say evil voices who speak here tonight sway you. Be brave. At this juncture in our nation's history, I see a tremendous lack of ethical and wise leaders committed to doing what is right and just, but not in Coeur d'Alene. We have a strong group of local citizens, yourselves included, who are not afraid to speak up and act. Thank you for doing the right work.
Thank you. Anita Pariseau? Welcome.
Thank you. I'm going to try really hard not to cry because this is really close to my heart. Dear Mayor Hammond and esteemed members of the Coeur d'Alene City Council, my name is Anita Pariseau, and I am blessed to call Coeur d'Alene home since my husband Mark and I moved back here in 2000 to raise our family. Mark was raised here and has deep family ties in this community. His father, the Honorable A.H. Pariseau Jr., served as the federal district magistrate and as the North Idaho First District judge during his time here. His uncle, Pat King, was the publisher of the Coeur d'Alene Press from 1963 to 1974, and then again in 1988. His family teases me that I am an Idahoan by marriage. As a devoted mother to two wonderful children who are part of the LGBTQ+ community, I'm here this evening to express my deep and heartfelt gratitude for your courageous decision to introduce new hate crimes chapter to our city's municipal code. In a time when hate and discrimination seem to be at an all-time high, particularly here in North Idaho, your commitment to protecting the rights and dignity of all individuals is not just commendable, but essential. This ordinance, which rightly includes protections based on sexual orientation and gender identity, is a significant and courageous step toward ensuring that everyone in Coeur d'Alene, my children included, can live without fear of harassment and violence. By criminalizing these actions and introducing enhanced penalties, you send a powerful message that hate has no place in our city. I commend you for standing up against hate and for taking action to create a safer, more inclusive Coeur d'Alene. This ordinance is more than just a legal measure. It is a statement of our values and our commitment to protecting the rights and dignity of every person who calls this city home. To Mayor Hammond, Councilor Evans, Councilor Wood, Councilor Miller, Councilor English, Councilor Gookin, Councilor McEvers, thank you for your leadership and your bravery. Your actions give me hope for my children's future, hope that, quite frankly, has been very hard to come by for the last few years. And for the future of all who seek to live and thrive in this incredible place that we are blessed to call home. Let us continue to stand together against hate, and let this ordinance be a beacon of our shared commitment to human rights, civil rights, and the dignity of all. Thank you for your time, your dedication, and making Coeur d'Alene a better place for everyone, especially my kids. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Ellen Golub? Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On November 19th of 1997, there was a Jewish boy from Brooklyn, New York, that was laid in the cool, damp ground of North Idaho. There were more people at his funeral than are here today. There were over 300 people. And that Jewish boy was my dad, Seymour Golub. He was only in town 5 years. Why were there 300 people here? Because he had a heart for kids. It was his idea to donate 30 acres to set up a campus, which was later became K-Tech on the prairie, because as a Jewish family, we bought 200 acres, not in Coeur d'Alene, but in Hayden. Since '91, since I've been here, I have never, personally, when I'm with my Arab friends, my Native friends, my Hispanic friends, have been a witness or had anything upon me. And it's kind of notorious if you're Jewish living in Hayden. My family, my mother was a Holocaust survivor. She was 13 and a half when Hitler annexed Austria. Her parents had a fabric store, but one day they didn't have a fabric store because Jews could not own property. And because of that, as Jews, we have a great affinity for our native friends who lost great parts of their land. My dad was a good friend of Henry Saijon, known as Hank. I was a friend of his son Cliff. We have bonds with our native people. You cannot, no law can make people love each other. Only God can make people love each other. And I have a great love for all people, but a law cannot do this. So the thing is this: I am a hater. I hated the fact that my mother died on February 16th of 2020. If she died 2 weeks later, I couldn't be with her because you could not be in the hospital. I used to play music in convalescent homes. The joy we brought people ended. I hate harming children. I hate mutilating children. There is a point for hate, but as our native friends, as Jews, we honor our elders. And I learned a lot from my grandmother. She told me how in Austria, the parents could not speak openly because they were afraid their kids would report them to their teachers. If we tried to legislate this, if people are scared to speak what they're going to say, we're no better than that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ryan Knipp.
Good evening, Mayor Hammond and members of the City Council. My name is Ryan Knipp, partner at Parkwood Business Properties and fourth-generation Coeur d'Alene resident. Parkwood is a family-owned commercial real estate business serving North Idaho for almost 50 years. Our company is passionate about Coeur d'Alene, and we have committed countless hours in giving back and helping where we can to improve our community's quality of life. The well-being of our fellow residents, friends, and family is of the utmost importance to us. On behalf of the Parkwood partners and their spouses, Charlie and Susan Knipp, Steve and Judy Meyer, Chris and Sarah Meyer, and Ryan and Terry Knipp, we strongly recommend that City Council adopt Chapter 9.23 of the Coeur d'Alene Municipal Code entitled Hate Crimes. We are outraged by the events taking place on March 21st with the Utah women's basketball team and on May 24th with members of the Coeur d'Alene tribe. These horrendous acts cannot be tolerated. We commend city staff for their efforts in proposing this new hate crimes ordinance in an effort to end racial harassment in our community. There must be consequences to this despicable behavior. These hateful acts do not represent who we are as a community, and we must respond. We need this council's leadership and guidance more now than ever to stop this behavior. Thriving communities are committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion while rejecting intimidation, harassment, and hate. Coeur d'Alene is a wonderful community filled with amazing people. When we have faced adversity and truly dark times in the past, we have always responded. We collectively stand up to support one another. Now is one of those times in our city's history where we need to rise and respond with courage. To this esteemed City Council, we beg you, we implore you to adopt this proposed hate crimes ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Tyrell Stevenson. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Tyrell Stevenson. I'm the Legislative Director for the Coeur d'Alene Tribe. Very honored to represent the tribe. I'm very confused by some of the comments I've heard because when I read the words in the ordinance, they don't regulate speech, let alone thought. They are regulating conduct. In order for someone to commit the hate crime, they have to have already committed an underlying offense. And by that, the city would be regulating conduct and not speech or thought. And I hope that should the city council pass this ordinance, and I really hope that happens, that some of the words that were spoken earlier are true, that people will join hands to prevent and stand up against violence, actions, and conduct that is motivated to threaten, intimidate others in our community because of who they are, what they look like, and I think it's a very important action to take to send a message that this is not tolerated in our community. Even if it cannot regulate every despicable act that might happen, it does send a message. And it also gives the prosecution and the city police tools that they can use in the future should another incident happen that they can use to protect our community. I'd urge the council to vote in favor of this ordinance. I think it's a very important measure to join other cities that have done this to protect their communities, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Jenny Gilliam?
She didn't make it. She may have submitted something online.
Okay. Emily Peterson? Welcome.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Emily Peterson. I'm a lifelong resident of North Idaho. I grew up here and left in 2000 to attend school. I received all of my education and decided to come back to practice as a physician in North Idaho because I felt like it was a wonderful place to raise my family. As my children have grown up, they have identified as members of the LGBTQ community and have been subjected to physical and verbal attacks on numerous occasions, both within school and outside of school. We have been told that there is no recourse for these events. In my position, I am one of the physicians that participates in recruiting other physicians to the community. I speak with young physicians who are raising families, people of color, people with young children who haven't yet developed an identity yet. They read the papers, they read online, they know the things that have been reported in the national news about Coeur d'Alene, and they ask, is this a safe and healthy place to raise my children? And it's very difficult to answer that question. I think this hate crimes ordinance would go a long way toward me being able to answer that question in the affirmative. I also want to say I agree with some of the prior speakers who said that it is the fault of the offender, a defect in their psyche that is resulting in this behavior. However, it's not the responsibility of the victim to educate the oppressor. It's the responsibility of the community and the community's leaders to educate the oppressor. So, in conclusion, I urge you to pass this ordinance, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Cecil Kelly?
I hate talking without notes.
I'm Cecil Kelly III. I've lived in Coeur d'Alene for the last 80 years. I'm a Coeur d'Alene retired businessman. I'm a part-time volunteer over at HREI in my senior years here. And, we're not here to suppress freedom of speech. We all love this concept. I do that. I use mine to write letters to the editor, but I'm very careful with what I say and how I say it, not to offend people, but try to push values. But I have lived through these bigotries, from the Aryan nations to the attacks on the young basketball players, to the trial at the courthouse that I attended recently. They say that some people say we don't have much hatred around here. Well, I've had 2 swastikas put on my home and animal feces put on my car. I know this happens to many people, but that's not why I'm here. I'm here to remind you, and first off, I would like to thank you for opening up the flag to all the churches in the Coeur d'Alene. I deeply appreciated that, for them to say the prayer. But I lost track of what I was going to say. What did I say last thing before I wandered off course there?
Talking about the swastikas and the swastikas on your house and the animal
But
feces.
those are minor things. I'm here to let the people of outside of Idaho know that there are people here who have struggled with human rights for 20, 30, 40 years. Marshall Men, Tony Stewart, Norm Gissel are my heroes because of what they have done. They are the beacons of light in our community. I'm just a minor little candle burning in the wind. But I think this is one more step that we must take to protect human rights here. It will not end here. It will go on. There were bigots in this world 2,000 years ago. There are going to be bigots in this world 2,000 years in the future. All we can do while we are here in our short little time is to stand up to it and do what we think is right and moral and ethical and just and fair to all people, whether they're members of the Catholic Church, whether they're Unitarians, whether they're Wicca witches, whether they're transgender, whether they're heteros, whatever they are. All Coeur d'Alene citizens are equal, and we must stand up for all of their rights, now and continuing from now. And I plead with you to consider and hopefully pass this legislation, this edition. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm afraid I would butcher that first name, but the last name is Matheson. Please share with me the correct pronunciation. I apologize.
Kajidan. Hi, Mr. Mayor, sorry about that. My name's Kajidan. Somebody signed me up, but I'm happy to provide comment, though. I obviously, I'm a member of the Coeur d'Alene tribe, and obviously for thousands of years, our people have called this home and have always made this area our community, and so it's really a special thing. I know we kind of nowadays think of things as being on the reservation or off the reservation, but that's truly not the way that we think about these things. This is our community. This all belongs to us, and it's a special thing. And I want to stand up here and encourage you guys to adopt the legislation. I think there was one individual that had referenced this as a statement of values, and I think that's 100% true. I think all laws are statements of values, and we want to make sure we do that. We want to make sure we're making the right statement for all of us. We all want to be able to tell the world, here's what we stand for, here's what we believe, and here's what we will not stand for. And whether we pass this, we'll make a statement. Whether we don't pass this, we'll make a statement too. And so I encourage the council to go ahead and adopt it. Thank you.
Thank you. Serenity? I think that's the name, Serenity. Okay. Clark Richmond? Welcome.
I don't have a polished speech here. I just encourage you to pass the ordinance.
I really appreciate at least the verbal things that were put out by the Coeur d'Alene Police Department and you, Jim Hammond, about the hate crimes. It's harassment, it's intimidation, like Chief Allen said, it's just really embarrassing, and it's not really who we are. There are some of us that do this, or maybe they were visiting, I'm not sure. But it's super embarrassing to have, a college team trying to go down the street to have a meal and be called the N-word. I mean, it's just super embarrassing. Or to have Native youth be verbally assaulted by grown men and told them that they need to go back to their reservation, when in my mind, we are guests on their land. And, folks say I'm in Idaho and I've been here 2 years, I've been here 30 years. But these folks have lived here for thousands of years. We have to respect that. So it really hurt my heart. I think we do have to make a statement. There's no reason to harass or bully people. It's uncalled for. Of course, we believe in free speech, but that doesn't, and the other thing too, like when you look at watch a basketball game or whatever else, it's the person that gets maybe pushes back that gets the penalty. And so these things can escalate. What happens if a youth, then feels threatened and responds, and then that kid or whatever gets a crime. So it's really cowardice, these things. And as individuals, no matter what happens, and I'm frustrated because God, I'm around downtown all the time. And down here, especially in the summer, it's so diverse. I've seen folks walk through Tubbs Hill with, Islamic families. I've seen Native kids. I see all sorts of different people around here, and that is God's creation. We're not Christianity has nothing to do with white nationalism. So I just encourage this ordinance. I encourage folks to be aware too, and to at least film things. I wish I was there so badly, and so were a lot of us. Just to film it, and not to escalate, but just to and at least if those things are filmed and they're put out, then maybe somebody loses a job. It's embarrassing for them. I don't know. But please pass the ordinance. And as somebody said, we'll continue on no matter what with it. So thank you.
Thank you. The last two are Susan Crow and then Jeff Crow.
I think you skipped over Blair.
What?
My name was on the list, but I was quite a bit up higher. My name is Blair Williams.
Well, come on up, please. I'm sorry that I missed you.
That's okay. That's all right. And because of my height, if it's all right, I'm just going to speak very loud.
Why don't you go over to the table?
Before I go over there?
Yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Then we can't see. There. Okay. Oh, there we go. Good.
Hello, thank you so much. My name is Blair Williams, and I come to you today as a third-generation Coeur d'Alene resident, as well as a business owner in the downtown corridor. I come to you with some anecdotes. I can remember growing up out on the Rimrock, and one day my father screaming at us to get into the car. My brother and I jumped in as we rushed across the Rimrock and rushed down a driveway. A truck came towards us with men firing guns. My father told us to lay down in the back seat, and we did. When we arrived at the home, it was covered in swastikas and shot up with bullets. My father rushed in, grabbed the gentleman and the 5-year-old, and rushed them to our cars as we rushed home. That's the community that I grew up in. That's the PTSD that I have. At the age of 20, I attended a conference for the National Endowment of the Arts in Washington, D.C. I was seated next to an amazing, vibrant woman of African American heritage. I remember that she rapped a poem about her garden. She then asked where I was from, and I proudly said, Hayden Lake, Idaho. And the look that came over her face frightened me. That was when I had to begin to defend my community, my hometown. Imagine my surprise when I moments later learned that she was Maya Angelou. Wow. Now, here I am in my hometown, raising the 4th generation in a town that I feel so proud to call my home. and I own a business, a 28-year-old business on Sherman Avenue in downtown Coeur d'Alene. I have seen, since the 31 yoo-hoos in the U-Haul, and the hate crimes or hate speech towards the Utah team, and now towards the horrible speech towards the Native children, we have seen an 18% decrease in our business. I am speaking to you from the economic impact that hate speech has on our community. You care about whether our streets are clean and safe because you want our economy to stay strong and our community to stay strong and our community to be respected worldwide. It is this reason that I ask you and implore you to pass this ordinance. I have large plate glass windows facing the street. I have clients from all over the globe. In the last 3 years, I have seen a 27% decrease in my legacy clients visiting my gallery. And when I ask them why, they say with fear, "Oh, I don't come to downtown Coeur d'Alene anymore. I don't know what to think or what's going to happen." So please, I implore you to pass this ordinance for the sake of the history of our community and our economy.
Thank you. Susan?
I had chills hearing that she got to sit next to Maya Angelou, one of my heroes of all time. I'm Susan Crow, and I'm here in support of Council Bill 24-1010. I am a licensed mental health therapist. Prior to becoming a mental health therapist, I was a probation counselor. My last 13 years doing mental health work was in a state prison, so I'm not a shrinking violet by any stretch. But I do know a lot about trauma, and I do know a lot about the effects of bullying. It happens to be one of my specializations. And I think it's crucial to recognize that verbal bullying is not harmless teasing or playful banter. It has serious consequences for both the target and the overall social climate in which it occurs. That is based on psychological research that has been done over the last several years. It's also important to understand that silence, inaction, and indifference can be a few of the most significant enablers of bullying. Passive bystanders observe bullying but choosing not to intervene or support the victim. Their silence inadvertently gives power to the bully and allows for further escalation of the behavior, and research has proven that to be true. Supportive bystanders stand up against verbal bullying by offering assistance and comfort to the victim, providing emotional support, reporting incidents, confronting bullies directly, and demonstrating solidarity with those who are targeted. Statistics show that when we take action against bullying, its occurrence decreases significantly. When bystanders speak out against verbal abuse, it disrupts the social dynamics supporting such behaviors, and it empowers the victims. We have the opportunity here tonight to decide whether we as a community choose to be passive bystanders, becoming complicit through our silence and inaction, thereby giving permission for the bullying to continue and even increase. Or we can stand against the hatred and ugliness that it's reared its head in our beautiful community. We must stand up for the vulnerable members of our society and quit making excuses for and protecting the perpetrators. So I encourage the City Council to go ahead and pass this ordinance, and I thank you, Mayor Hammond, and City Council members for allowing me the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. And last but not least, Jeff?
Well, maybe a little least.
So that's what he looks like.
The man behind the curtain. I'm here to ask for your support of Council Bill 24-1010. I'm stepping up this evening in defense of the First Amendment. As a media guy, it's my most important amendment. We've heard the First Amendment argument used to protect hate speech for decades now. This is nothing new. However, the Supreme Court has ruled on various occasions that free speech does not extend without boundary. For example, they have ruled that the First Amendment cannot excuse any effort to undermine our military. So there are lines that cannot or should not be crossed. I'd like to offer an example that perhaps everyone in this room might ponder. Here's the scenario, and please forgive my vulgarity. I'm going to get in my pickup truck. I'm going to ready it for my political parade down Sherman Avenue. On one side of my pickup, I'm going to fly the obligatory Confederate flag, and on the other side, I'm going to fly my 4x6 foot F Jesus flag. That's right, F Jesus. Now I ask you, how many of those leaders and others that have come here tonight and or out there are in opposition to this ordinance are going to come to my defense to help protect my First Amendment rights to do so? My point is, there is a line. We all have a line when it comes to hate speech and its intersection with our First Amendment rights. The question here this evening is, can the city come to a consensus to where to draw its line for the betterment of our community?
Thank you. I'll close public comment, and I ask the council's consideration of the consent calendar.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move for approving consent calendar as presented, including Resolution 24052 and taking out C for discussion.
Second.
Motion to second, discussion. Seeing none, will the clerk take the roll, please?
Wood.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Miller.
Aye.
McEvers.
Yes.
Gookin.
Yep.
English.
Yes.
The next item is a GO bond, but I'm going to, because so many people are here, we're going to come back to that.
Thank you.
Regarding the ordinance adoption or not, I think that we should take that up first. And so with that, I would ask our esteemed counsel for his presentation on this issue. Randy Adams, our city attorney.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members. Staff is bringing before you tonight a new ordinance, which makes it a crime to commit one of several other crimes, already established crimes, because of the actual or perceived race, color, creed, religion, ancestry, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, physical or mental disability, or national origin of another person. We live in a wonderful city on the shores of a beautiful lake, a city full of kind and tolerant people. Many years ago, a man who didn't even live in Coeur d'Alene brought his particular brand of hate to town and influenced how others viewed our city. Recently, a few other people have demonstrated their lack of tolerance, their lack of kindness, their disdain for what some call the golden rule, treat others as you would have them treat you. And once again, some people have allowed the few to influence their opinion of the many in Coeur d'Alene. I emphasize that the ordinance you are considering tonight is directed at the few who mar Coeur d'Alene in the eyes of some with the stain of hate. I also want to emphasize that this ordinance does not, I repeat, does not criminalize speech, nor does it criminalize hateful beliefs. Under this law, people can continue to hold and express views that are hurtful to others, but they can't actually harm others. This is not an attempt to criminalize a victimless crime. It is an effort to punish the conduct of selecting a victim based on race and other characteristics. So, if someone commits the crime of intimidation, malicious injury to property, harassment, assault and battery, disorderly conduct, or commits a public nuisance against another human being because of that person's actual or perceived race, color, creed, etc., they will be held responsible not just for the underlying crimes, which are already on the books, but of something that can be called, and has been called in many other places, a hate crime. The prosecution will, as in every other crime, have to prove every element of the offense beyond a reasonable doubt. In other words, a jury will have to be fully satisfied and convinced that every element of that crime has been proven, including intent. Many laws that we currently have in this state, in every other state, are what we call specific intent crimes. That is where the intent of the person is an element of the crime. Those specific intent crimes are perfectly legal, perfectly valid, do not violate the Constitution. This ordinance will subject a violator to citation for an additional misdemeanor, which carries a possible fine and jail time. It is hoped that this ordinance will deter those few from acting in a way that harms those who are different from themselves, and hopefully this ordinance will also help educate those few that hate is not an admirable quality. We are not launching the city into the unknown. Many cities and states and the federal government have similar laws. For example, 18 U.S.C. Section 249 is the U.S. Federal Hate Crimes Act and prohibits certain conduct causing injury or damage because of religion, race, and other characteristics. Kansas City, Missouri has an ordinance enhancing the penalty of violation of city ordinances when motivated by hate. Charleston, South Carolina responded to the violence in its community by making intimidation motivated by prejudice against particular groups a separate crime. Fargo, North Dakota makes harassment motivated by such prejudice a separate crime. Chicago has a hate crime ordinance, which makes it a crime to commit other crimes, quote, by reason of any motive or intent relating to or any antipathy, animosity, or hostility based upon the actual or perceived race, color, sex, religion, national origin, age, ancestry, sexual orientation, and others. And there are many other examples. The state of Idaho defines malicious harassment to cause injury or damage, or threaten to cause injury or damage, with the intent to cause injury or damage because of a person's race, color, religion, ancestry, or national origin. The Department of Justice has said that hate crime laws which proscribe hate, violence, or violent conduct is not the prohibition of expressive conduct or speech and does not violate the First Amendment. Both the United States Supreme Court and the Idaho Supreme Court have addressed hate crime laws without finding any violation of the Constitution. So staff is recommending to council to adopt this ordinance to give the police, to give the city prosecutors another tool to help make the city safe for all our residents and visitors. And I will stand for questions.
Questions for Randy? Woody?
Andy, if this ordinance had been in place like last year, would it made any difference in the last two issues we've been kind of spinning around on?
May or may not have. I was not the prosecutor. I didn't look at the facts of the case in detail, but the prosecutor found that the state statute was not violated because there was no threat of physical harm or injury with the expectation that that would actually occur. And so this would not have change that result.
Okay, in either case.
In either case, there still has to be a threat of harm, violence, injury that is reasonable to expect would occur before we can punish it. Otherwise, you are punishing speech.
So they can say whatever they want, as long as you don't.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, we can say what we want.
So let me
And
ask you this scenario. We're in a bar and we're drunk, and two white guys get in an argument and call each other names, but then they fight. Would that change anything if it was a black person or a tribal person?
Only if the intent was there to fight because of race or religion. And that's something that the prosecutor would have to prove. Intent is often something a prosecutor has to prove based on all the evidence, based on the circumstances of the offense.
Thank you.
Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Randy, I'll have more comments as we go along, but I think this is well-researched. I appreciate the work you put into this. Under the penalty, I just had a quick question. Section D, I'm wondering if that is just, we're offering possible sentencing guidelines, or that's not really, we can't hold a magistrate to this sentencing. Is that just an offering of, this is some of the things that could occur if you were convicted?
It is. It gives the judge an option to order something in addition to a fine or jail time, and that was a recommendation from our prosecutors.
All right, but we know that they'll make their own sentencing decision.
Correct. We can only make a recommendation.
All right, thank you.
Dan?
Well, since you're on the penalty section, I will comment something that caught my eye and I highly approve of is section C. In addition to the punishment prescribed by section A hereof, a person found to have violated 9.23.010 of this code shall be ineligible for a period of up to 3 years for any city license, permit, or activity. Hit them in the pocketbook. I mean, people have a right to do what they're going to do, make kinds of choices, but you've also got to be ready to pay the price. And so, like I say, I think that's great. Is that something you invented, or was it part of something else?
There are similar provisions throughout our city code. For example,
okay.
Something that we've dealt with relatively recently, massage violations.
I remember
there
those.
is a provision in there to prevent or deny a license if there's been a conviction within a certain period of time.
How would you, I mean, I think we understand what a license, permit, which actually we don't have huge amounts, but what kind of stuff is a city activity?
Well, for example, the parades that we have are sometimes by contract, not by permit. Or some concert series are by contract, not by permit.
Okay.
So the intent
they
was to
could
cover.
attend the parade or something, but not get a permit to run the.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Dan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, Randy, I'm talking to an attorney again. I just want you to know that I was deposed for 5 hours last week. So
That must have been fun.
I enjoyed it. So, and you'll all be reading that later.
We're in trouble.
So I have some questions. People raised some concerns, and of course I had some concerns. I've done a ton of research on this because I want to make sure, just like people have said, that we're not stepping on someone's First Amendment right. And I also want to thank Mr. Stevenson. He called me, and I guess he's a former public defender, so he was able to answer some of my questions as well, saving you some time. Can we talk about the difference in the code between motive and intent?
Well, under the law, motive refers to what prompts a person to do any act, to do something. Intent is a specific legal term, and it refers to the state of mind that someone is intentionally doing something as opposed to negligently. So it is, when we create ordinances like this, we don't use motive. we use intent because it is a state of mind which is a recognized element of many crimes and refers to an intentional act in doing something rather than a negligent or careless act.
Okay, and that's one of the keys that was mentioned in a lot of this stuff. I got a legal paper here from some law school somewhere, and it addresses a lot of those issues, motive and intent. How can you get in someone's head? And the high hurdle that sets for prosecutors. So could you want to comment on that?
Well, it is a hurdle. I mean, but it is like any other crime. Assault, for example, requires an intentional act. It can be proven by circumstantial evidence, by witnesses of what somebody may have said just before the act, or something that he may have said or she said sometime before, I'm going to go out to the bar and beat somebody up. You can show intent a wide variety of ways. It's going to take some work for the prosecutors to find that evidence, but it is done every day in court.
Okay, let's talk about augmented penalties. I think, are these things, all these hate crime items that are mentioned here in this code, A, B, C, D through H, are those augmented?
No. They're a separate crime. Some jurisdictions augment the penalties for a existing crime if it's done with the improper motive. We as a city can only charge misdemeanors. There is a cap to what we can charge in terms of a fine or jail time. So if an underlying crime is already a misdemeanor, we can't enhance the penalty for a misdemeanor, but we can make it a separate offense, so that in these situations, a person has not only committed one crime, the underlying crime, but has committed the second crime, which is choosing a victim based on these characteristics.
So in the first one, A, intimidation, is that that's a primary charge, right? I mean,
Correct.
this would not be in addition to anything else.
Correct.
So, and this one seems to me to be the one that would cross the line of the First Amendment more than anything else, because it mentions the intent to intimidate another person. How does that rise to the level of a crime?
Well, we have, there's a state law on intimidation by telephone, by communication. And that is a crime. It's recognized. It's been approved by the courts. Intimidation in this case is defined as the violation of any other city ordinance with that motive, with that intent, I should say. And so it's not criminalizing the thought or the expression. It's criminalizing the intent behind the violation of another ordinance.
So this one isn't augmented?
No, it's not. It's a broad category of, if you violate any other city ordinance, a criminal ordinance, with this intent, then you have a second offense.
Okay, so and you just said it's a second offense, so someone cannot be charged by this alone? They have to be charged with this within...
They have to have violated another...
Something else?
Correct.
Okay, going back to the incident with the Utah basketball team, and I have the complaint here. And you mentioned earlier, when you answered Councilmember McEver's question, that under this new ordinance, he would not be charged, Mr. Myers would not have been charged under this ordinance.
Our prosecutor found that there was no evidence that there was a reasonable expectation that those words would have been carried out in terms of violence.
Okay.
And so, no, it would not have, given the same reasoning, the same facts, it does not appear that this new ordinance would have changed that result.
So just for a hypothetical, how could it, if maybe it was a confrontation then?
It could be somebody stops the truck, jumps out, brandishes a weapon, follows them for a prolonged period of time in the vehicle as they're walking down the street. Many of those factors would have gone into the assessment as to whether there was a reasonable expectation or belief that they could have carried out those threatening words.
Okay, and that makes me feel good, because one of the tough things that we have to do, we always say, oh, this is a tough decision, but we do have to hold up people's rights. I mean, that's what our government is founded upon, is protecting people's rights, especially from the government. And even though language may be offensive to us, and we may think that that's not us, as many people said here, people still have a right to be a racist.
They do.
And this code does not outlaw racism.
It would be impossible to do that.
Okay, but it does, in that, the people who did mention the First Amendment here, in that perspective, this is not really shading the First Amendment at all regarding someone being a jerk.
No, they're entitled to be a jerk.
But if it rises to a level of harassment, intimidation, threats.
These crimes, yeah.
Those levels, which are already, I think anyone who's reasonable, I hate using that word, but anyone who's reasonable would recognize that that's not the reaction of a rational person. Then all of a sudden, this code triggers that, and they can be charged.
Correct.
And in the process, so the process is the police would have to investigate. And then if the police find substantial evidence or however they do their job, then it goes to the prosecutor. Then the prosecutor goes to a judge, and eventually it goes to a jury. Am I correct with that?
That would be the ultimate issue, and the jury would be the ultimate decider as to whether the prosecution has shown every element of the crime, including intent.
Okay, so there's still a process here. This is not a condemnation. We're not tossing someone right away into jail, or can we with a misdemeanor? I guess we can.
Well, someone can be arrested for a misdemeanor if it's committed in the presence of an officer.
Okay.
Usually, that's a discretionary call by the officer. They can issue a citation instead, and that's typically what we see.
So someone would have to be really dumb to do that.
I would think.
We would think so, yes. Very good. I may have other questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Council, one of the things that I'd like to point out is that this ordinance is not a fix-all. It's not at all perceived as something that will fix the issues that we've been faced with recently and in the past. It's a larger part, or a smaller part of a larger campaign to change the culture of our city so that even those people who have that kind of hate will fear sharing that publicly because it's just not acceptable in this community. So there is much more to this issue than what we're talking about tonight. The point of this is it does say we as a city, within certain bounds, object to the kind of behavior that's listed in here, and we want to curb it any way that we can. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to make a few comments. We've heard very kind things said, brave, courageous, sitting up here. To me, we're very undeserving of those comments. This is simply the right thing to do. We're here to protect our community and protect the people we love dearly. From my perspective, hate will not be tolerated and should not be tolerated here in Coeur d'Alene or our surrounding areas. So for me, this is an easy decision, and I'd be happy to make a motion.
Please.
Can we have more discussion after your motion? Sure.
Let's see. So first, I would move to dispense with the rule and read Council Bill number 24-1010 once by title only.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Will the clerk take the roll, please?
Miller.
Aye.
McEvers.
Yes.
Gookin.
Yep.
English.
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Will the clerk read the title, please?
Council Bill 24-1010, an ordinance providing for the adoption of a new chapter of the Coeur d'Alene Municipal Code, Chapter 923, Hate Crimes, providing for the repeal of conflicting ordinances, providing for severability, providing for the publication of a summary of the ordinance, and providing for an effective date thereof.
Thank you. Now a motion, and then we'll get to the discussion.
Make a motion to adopt Council Bill number 24-1010.
Second.
We have a motion, second. Discussion on the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would, too, like to address the citizens that have spoke tonight and told us some of their heartfelt stories of what they've dealt with in their lives. Everything we do up here as your elected officials is a value judgment. And what we've heard from our community is you need to support the values that reject hate crimes. I'm really pleased with the work done by our city attorney. I've read a lot of criminal codes through the years. After nearly 30 years of law enforcement, it's a walk in the park to me to prove intent. I'm not concerned about that at all. I think that this is the strongest step that we can take to protect the victims in this community that have endured hate crime over and over and over. Now, when I say hate crime, a lot of it's hate incident. Maybe it doesn't rise to the level of crime, but it will in the future. And I think that this council is poised to really make a difference. And I'm really grateful to the mayor and for the rest of the council for standing up and moving forward with this. I hope so.
Dan?
Me? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, just, I would say that, I respect people's right to address this, and that's one of the things, have the right to their opinion, but I'll also say, this isn't a hard decision for me. I mean, it's real clear-cut, and so that part, easy for me to make this one. Also, I'm a counselor too, and one of the previous speakers talked, and I deal every day with victims of trauma from some of it's religious and gender and racial, and trauma has long-term effects on people, the community, the victim, but frankly, I would say on the offender too. They're giving up, they're giving up something at that, and maybe we can't help them, but anyway, this is the right thing to do, and the only other thing I was going to say, that pocketbook issue I like, and I already said that, so, okay.
Any more brief discussion?
Mr. Mayor, so, this was a decision that I had to weigh very carefully. I do want to comment on Mr. English's comment. He mentioned that we do have the item in here for penalty, that the additional punishment is that a person will be ineligible for a period of 3 years for a city license permit or activity.
Up to.
That, it'd be kind of easy to get around that. I mean, if you have a spouse or someone, I could see someone getting around that. So I don't know if that's going to be as effective as people think it would. The issues that I brought up, that were brought up in all my research that I studied on all this. So there's a First Amendment issue. Does this quash people's rights? And what I found out is that if it's augmented, if it's in addition to another crime being committed, then no, it's not a problem. We have augmented laws already, and I don't know if Idaho has this, but you decide to knock over a liquor store, there's a crime. There's a punishment associated with that. You do it with a gun, there's a higher punishment for it, and that's an augmented crime. So in this case, if someone's going to already do something that is on the books, that is not something that we define as civil behavior, this adds to it. So it's not like it can be singled out as something that someone does specifically with no other intent. As our attorney said, that's still covered as free speech, as offensive as it is to us. It's still covered. The other issue is double jeopardy. Does this put someone in double jeopardy? And that argument has been offered back and forth and argued in court. I don't think it will in this case, but it might be something that's brought up in the future. One of the biggest problems with hate crime laws and legislation, and Idaho already has it on the statutes. This came up in 1983 in response to the Aryan nations. And so it's already on the books. And I'm really curious why it wasn't brought up, and we don't need to discuss it, but why it wasn't brought up in the complaint against Mr. Myers. But while these incidents are being reported at a higher level, they're being prosecuted at a lower level. And that's just something everyone needs to be aware of. Just because this thing is, and I assume it's going to pass, Just because it's going to pass doesn't necessarily mean that things will change overnight. In fact, some of the best material that I read on this from the Atlantic and New York Times said that the true solution to this has to be community-wide. We cannot just rely on some piece of legislation and say, well, let's pat ourselves on the back. Yes, this is feel-good legislation, but as a community, we need to come together in more ways to fight this thing. We can't just say, look what we did, set it on a shelf, go have a beer and think we're better. No, there's got to be a lot more work that needs to be done. And that involves many aspects of the community, not just government. But in the big picture, and to address some of those issues that were brought up earlier with some of the comments, which I have. So yeah, this is basically, as Mr. Gennario said, this is against bigoted action. And he said that he would stand with us if it was against bigoted action. And I believe that is what defines the whole code, is we have now created not only something that's bad that someone can do, but we have added to it that it can be bigoted too. And that not only sends a message, but I hope that that actually is effective. So, thank you.
Okay. Kiki?
I'll be brief. I appreciate that you brought up we must prove intent. We're not launching into the unknown here. This is federal, state, all over the country, and we just can't stand by and not, and just remain silent, so.
Thank you. In a way, it's kind of a shame that we have to do that. I'm reminded of what we're taught as preschoolers and in kindergarten, and that is be kind, learn to work with others, and learn to share. That's simple. And apparently some people don't get it. I saw something the other day that said that schools need to do more to teach children how to behave. And actually, as a former longtime educator, part of my past life, I would say no, families need to do more to make sure that children know right from wrong. Will the clerk take the roll, please?
Mr. Mayor?
Miller.
Yes. I'm sorry.
Oh, it's okay.
Go ahead.
Oh, thanks. Just two things. I was struggling with this the last few days, not sleeping good, moaning and groaning at you, and concerned about the history and learning about how we got here, because I was here. The First Amendment rights has made me feel more comfortable. Dan, you covered this really well, and a lot of you turned them into words where they were just feelings for me. Back in the day, Christy, I seem to remember something about lemonade. That's how we dealt with it. We sort of stood off and said, we're not going to participate. We're going to make lemonade. And I'm thinking, this is a big step for the lemonade stand. And so I'm supporting this, and I think it's the right thing to do. And it's really probably the only thing we can do right now. So thanks, everyone, for all the work on this.
And thank you for the research you've done. Appreciate that. Will the clerk take the roll, please?
Miller.
Aye.
McEvers.
Yes.
Gookin.
Yep.
English.
Yes.
Wood.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion carries. We'll now move back to the presentation from our fire department. We are going to adjourn, Tom, for 5 minutes.
Take a brief breather.
We'll call the meeting back to order, and the next order of business is a general obligation bond that our fire chief would like to share with us the initial thoughts on this issue. Thank you, Chief Gripe.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the City Council, and before we get started, thank you for the agenda change. I did not want to distract you from that important decision, and happy early 4th of July to everybody. So this evening, I come before you to seek your approval to proceed with an RFQ process to select a municipal financial advisor that will begin the planning for our third public safety general obligation bond in May of 2025. As many of you read the Coeur d'Alene Press this last Saturday, there's still several details to work out with this. So tonight, I'm going to provide you with a macro view of our capital needs, and if approved, work with the municipal financial advisor to come back to you with a detailed proposal that gives you options to consider with impacts to the taxpayers moving forward from there for you to consider for a May 2025 ballot. With that, I want to start with sharing a short PowerPoint presentation. I promise I'll keep it brief because I know you've been here for a couple hours already. And with that, please ask questions if you have any. It's short, it's about 8 slides. And like I said, I'll keep it at the macro level for us tonight. So I want to start out with a little bit of history. Most of you probably saw the article in the paper Saturday. Mr. Bill Bewley did write, had some really good facts in there from the past bonds that the city has run, but I just want to review it in case some of you missed it. So back in 2005, the city approved its first general obligation bond for public safety and went forward with a $7 million bond that was voter approved with a 74% margin that year. Some of the items that were made possible from that bond included the regional training facility for police and fire that's out at Station 2. We had a fire department administration land acquisition and built that facility. We paid off Station 3 and the police station, and we purchased some apparatus, 1 engine and a brush truck with that money from 2005. 10 years later, we moved again towards the general obligation bond, came to council, and they supported us to do a second GO bond, and that was for $6 million, and that was approved by an 85% margin that year. And some of the items that were made possible from the funding from that bond included 3 engines and a ladder truck for the fire department, a shared police and fire facility is known as the warehouse and the building that has burned down in the past month for PD, fireboat, camera network, mobile command center that we've since lost as well, some PD carports, command vehicles, and some utility vehicles for the fire department. This past fall, your fire department created some internal capital improvement committees that were overseen by Deputy Chief Lucas Pichette, and their job and mission were to identify and prioritize capital improvements and apparatus needs for your fire department looking a few years into the future. This is the list that is prioritized, and as you can see, apparatus continues to be our top priority for replacement. And in addition to that, we have an expansion remodel of Station 2, which would include designated PPE room, which is where we would store our turnouts, as well as decontamination room and some added living facilities as our operational model would include to move the battalion chief out there since it's in a centralized location. Moving down, the expansion of Station 1 would include also a PPE room and a decontamination room at that station. The Station 3 project would not be an expansion of that fire station. It would be needed storage, so a scaled down version of a pole barn like we have at Station 2 currently. Station 3 is our technical rescue station, so this would provide us the ability to move our technical rescue equipment and apparatus out to that station where those folks are stationed at. We're still evaluating the need for additional or replacement of command vehicles, SCBAs, as well as our station alerting system upgrades are being worked on. Any changes there, we would have to make sure that it's compatible with the county's 911 system capabilities.
Chief,
Councilman.
what, PPE room, what is a PPE room?
So those are the turnouts that we wear. Currently, 2 of the stations have PPE storage rooms, and Station 1 and 2 do not, so they are out on the apparatus floor, and they're exposed to diesel fumes on a daily basis, which is not good for PPE. So, yeah, it's a standard that we're trying to meet with that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Let's see here. Move forward. I wanted to give you a picture of what fire engines and ladder trucks cost in 2015. As you can see, the pumper engine has doubled since 2015. A ladder truck is nearly doubled, and staff vehicles, there's a significant increase as well. Moving forward, something that is driving fire departments to reevaluate their replacement schedules is the fact that we could expect a 30-month to 36-month build-out on fire engines. And so planning ahead and is really imperative to this, as well as the double of, the increase in costs that we're experiencing from certain manufacturers in the industry. These costs also include the equipment that would be on these apparatus as well. So what's the lifetime or a life expectancy of fire engines? So there's guidelines out there of 15 years. What works for us is reevaluating our apparatus every 10 to 12 years because it's important for the Coeur d'Alene Fire Department to move frontline apparatus into a backup position in our fire department. We utilize backup apparatus almost every week when we have frontline apparatus in for repairs, routine maintenance, and when we respond a unit out of the city or out of the county on mutual aid, we utilize callback personnel to come in, and they have to be able to staff an apparatus and fill that vacant station until the primary unit returns. And so for us, being able to predict the life of these apparatus is important. We don't want to run the wheels off of them, move them to a backup position where they've lost their value and reliability. So we do need reliable apparatus in that backup position. Currently, we do not have a backup aerial apparatus. We have one ladder truck, so if it's out of service for repair or maintenance, that's all we have. We do have one pumper engine right now that's our only backup apparatus. It's a 2007 Spartan engine. And so as you can tell, the needed or the relevance to this is that we need to move forward with this, and our priority would consist of aerial apparatus first, and then move a pumper engine into that backup role immediately. Did Councilwoman have a question? Oh, okay. So what will a municipal financial advisor firm provide us? Well, so they provide the expertise and the staff to help us plan and roadmap what we're going to call our public engagement process for this. So our outreach to the public, providing them the facts about the general obligation bond, the need, trying to justify the need, and they will come in and help us with demographics, surveys that will solicit input and feedback from the community, and make all the relevant facts available through multiple avenues that would include community in-person gatherings, as well as social media and accurate information on our websites. Our ultimate goal here is so that when people go to the polls in May, that they are making an informed decision on facts, that we give them the necessity and that we provide transparency as we have in our last two bonds. We have a really good resume here in Coeur d'Alene since we were very transparent with our 2005 bond, our 2015 bond, and even post-election, we were very responsible with the money and how we spent it, and spent it the way we said we would when we did our public engagement, trying to pass both of those bonds as well. So back to my staff report, our decision point and recommendation for council is that you approve the fire department to proceed with an RFQ process to select a municipal financial advisory firm with the intent to begin planning for the next general obligation bond in May of '25, with the intent of coming back to you with a detailed proposal for your consideration that illustrates the impact to the taxpayers before we move forward any further. And with that, I would entertain any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Tom. Questions? Woody?
Just a couple. So there's no budget put into this dollar yet, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And in the past, we haven't done this. You did it internally?
As far as the
planning,
hiring an advisor, correct?
Yeah.
Yep.
Dan?
Yeah, here I am.
I was going to call you Woody.
I am Woody second. So Chief, just to follow up on that question, so why didn't we do it before?
So in past bonds, the union took a lead in the GO bond campaign process. And so we've moved in a different direction with this one, and we're seeking to go with a municipal financial advisor, and we're calling that, it would be a public engagement and not use the word campaign. So it's more of a public outreach, providing facts and trying to show justification for what we need.
So we did it internally before, or actually they aren't internal, but
they actually funded with a third party to help with a campaign, yes.
And now we're doing it with the debt service fund. And if I understand correctly, the debt service fund is money, is it interest on the bond,
The current
portions
bond,
that we
yes.
didn't spend, we get
Property
interest
tax.
on that?
Yep.
And that's the debt service
There's currently $140,000 in that debt service fund that would be available for this if you choose to approve it.
And we're going to go up to $50K for an RFQ for someone else to do what we did
That's an
inside
approximate, yeah. What I did is I reached out to Caldwell, who just did this last fall.
Yeah.
They used a municipal financial advisor, and it was in that 50,000 ballpark for what their expenses were to initially get it off the ground. There's also other, hands that go into this pot. Would be a bond attorney that would need to be secured. And we would rely on the municipal advisor at that point to guide us down the road of compliance with this process.
And did Caldwell pass their bond?
They did, narrowly,
Outstanding.
yes.
Thank you.
If I could
Christie?
add, Mr. Mayor, just on the side of the legal side to this, the funding that we're proposing is for the information piece. And financial advisors are now doing that quite regularly. We've always had a financial advisor to guide us through the general obligation framework, all the laws. They will bring forward the legal counsel. Those fees can be put into the bond. And then the other piece to how this fund has grown is there is some interest, but also when this is put onto the tax rolls, it is a levy rate, and the levy rates never come in perfectly for what we asked for the debt service. And so as we were growing, they put the levy rate out there, taxes are coming in strong. We dedicate it specifically to the debt service fund, and over 8 payments now, it has grown greater than what the payments have been.
What did he say?
Christie?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chief, there's no question that we need to protect the public, and you have to have the tools to do that. Our firefighters will need the new apparatus. They will need the new breathing apparatus as well, and probably command vehicles. The expansion of the stations, I was glad you went into a little bit of detail about that, because that sounds so broad, like we're just going to go ahead and build
Right.
large facilities, and you're really just talking about storage for needed equipment. I will say that I was recently in the basement of Station 1, and it's awful down there. And I don't know if, through your expansion, if you would address some of that, or if that's just space that we don't want to use, but I think it's uninhabitable, and I see some of your staff trying to inhabit it. So I hope that would be something that could be addressed, but I know you have priorities. The other question You know, in the past, these geo bonds, they've been a little combination, mostly fire, some police. I don't know if police are going to be included at all. I think that would be important. Public safety is both. I understand the priority. I do understand that certainly in the past that it has been our union that has worked hard on the campaign and carried the ball, and I get that. And so generally, they've carried the larger amount of the bond that goes toward firefighting. So I just throw that out there, that I hope that there's still some working relationship with the police department, and maybe some of their needs, especially since they just had a devastating loss, some of their needs would be addressed. The question I'm getting at is, I understand the union is sitting out this opportunity at the moment to I guess, I don't even know how to phrase it, to carry the campaign forward. What I want to know is, as we move forward on the bond, can we count on the support of the union?
So I want to answer both your questions. So to this point, we have not received any, long-term asset requests from PD. This is still early and fluid. We can add to this. We can take away from this. We can reprioritize once we get that municipal advisor in here. So I'm not suggesting a fire-only GO bond by any means. And I understand we're post-fire incident, so I know that the scenarios change. So this is early on. We can do whatever direction you'd like to see us do with that. With the union, what I don't want to do is define their level of support based on their financial contribution, because the past two, they've contributed a lot of money for those campaigns. And so I think it's appropriate at this time for us to go this route. Our community's changed, but I believe that they are going to be an important player in this, and they have to be involved for our success moving forward. So I don't want to base their support based on if they're writing us a check or not, because they will be on the team, they will be involved with the public engagement process with us the entire way.
I appreciate that very much. Our union is very recognizable in this community. People trust them. They understand that they can really explain to the community what the needs are, as you do as well.
Yeah.
Really, the question before council tonight is the issue of hiring an outside financial advisor. And quite frankly, the bond market is always challenging to understand in terms of rates, in terms of viability. I've been privileged to serve almost 20 years on a state commission that deals with bonds for all the facilities that we build around the state, and it's very complex. So I think it's very wise, and in fact, before police or fire can decide what kind of program they want to put together, they need to better understand just what the financial market looks like and what we can do.
Looks pretty bad.
Mr. Mayor, I would make a motion to approve the fire department to proceed with an RFQ to select a municipal advisory firm and begin planning for a general obligation bond election at the end of May 2025.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Will the clerk take the roll, please?
Evans.
Yes.
Miller.
Aye.
McEvers.
Yes.
Gookin.
Yes.
English.
Yes.
Wood.
Yes,
I move to adjourn.
Second.
we've still got Dan's issue.
Oh, that's right.
Dan,
It's fine. You want to
Sorry.
adjourn, then it hangs.
Mom's calling me.
you're up.
Yeah, so I pulled this item off just because it was on the consent calendar, and what it is it's that the Arts Commission wants to spend $1,500 a year for 3 years to hire a poet laureate for the city, a poet. And I know this money is not the general fund where we always talk about, we have unsustainable spending, whatever. This is the arts fund, so it's separate from that. That's not the issue here. I was the editor of a magazine for several years, and I got to tell you, there's a ton of poets out there. and they're all eager to get money for something. And even though we paid $10 per poem, I would get hundreds and hundreds of poems every single week just because there's a lot of poets out there. So I would be okay with a poet laureate if the cost was a lot lower. And another thing is, since this is arts money, and we've talked about performing arts, I would prefer if the Arts Commission would take the majority of this money and dedicate it toward the performing arts. We have Lake City Playhouse coming back online. I'm sure they'd love a grant. We have musical groups here in town. We have the symphony. I would prefer that that money go toward the established, our community performing arts, and less of it go toward the poet. If you want to have a poet, you don't need to pay him $1,500 a year. Trust me, these people work for peanuts. And so I would just move that we send it back to the Arts Commission with that recommendation.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, I want to speak on behalf of the Arts Commission. I've got some comments here from our current chair. And a little bit about it is we've heard from council for numerous years about expanding art in the community in different forms. You know, we've heard enough sculptures throughout the community, enough utility boxes. And so this is a way to really expand the arts throughout our community. A poet laureate is not only responsible for writing poems, they'll host poetry workshops, they'll recite their poems, publicly, they'll organize literary events, they'll judge poetry contests, many for the youth in our community. They'll compose poems for special occasions. They'll introduce poets and authors at events, and they'll encourage budding poets. They'll understand the depth of our city, our history, and our rich heritage here, and they'll find unique ways to express that. So I highly support it, as did the Arts Commission unanimously.
And Woody?
So is the arts doing any, what'd you call it?
Performing arts?
Performing arts. We
We are
touching
supporting
that?
the performing arts, and Troy could give specifics on that, but yes.
Yeah, we've also got that Emerge grant that will support some of that. That's also pottery classes, and there's camps that are going on.
So
No,
this
to
is
Dan's
another level.
Yeah, this is another level. And to Dan's comment, if anybody heard it on the mic, he was saying that is not performing arts, and that's correct. Pottery is not performing arts, but it's another art form to be offered to the community members, which, Dan, I know has been a request of yours for years.
Yeah, and I don't object to Emerge. I think that's fun. I'm glad we do that. If I was going to make a motion on this, it would be just to lower the amount that we pay a poet laureate and dedicate the rest of the money to the performing arts. And that would be my thought. I agree with everything you said, except when you said it's a way to expand, it's an expensive way to expand. So I would say just lower that down, try it out, see what it goes. I mean, $1,500, I got to tell you, because I used to pay poets, and $1,500 is a lot of money to pay a poet. There's a lot of them. When you guys have, there's a call here, just to let people know, there will be a call that will be published, and so for a month, people will be able to submit poetry and stuff like that. So then you're going to get a ton of them. You are going to get thousands. So just to let you know, at $1,500 a year, you're going to get a lot of poets.
Christy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I first became aware of this, I thought, well, that's kind of new, and I had to really think it through. And I thought, well, we have asked for an expansion of the arts. We don't see a poet on every corner, but poets are fun. I asked myself, Dan, what if the Arts Commission wanted to hire a singer to go sing at the national anthem at various events? What if they wanted to hire a pianist? What if they wanted to hire someone to do a dramatic reading? It's all forms of art, you know that. And just because it's maybe not something that I sit and do, I tried. That was one of the hardest college courses I've ever taken, because you had to really you had to identify what they were saying. And I'm just not that creative, but it was fascinating. But I know a lot of people are creative like that. And they do have a lot of fun with poetry, and I guess I'm coming down on this, that I don't think $1,500 is outrageous. I'm willing to, I don't like to micromanage the Arts Commission either, not unless there's a real strong call for it to maybe make sure there's not division in the community. So I'm going to support this.
Dan?
Just that, yeah, I'm very supportive of this. Being a member, I know Humanities Council, we do a lot of support for these kinds of things, and hearing Blair, talk about, the arts and the different things, and I'm guessing, Dan, I don't know what year that was, and what a Big Mac back then cost compared to $15 now, or a pumper truck or a ladder truck, but, $15, and they've got the funds and they want to use it on that. I also wouldn't micromanage, so I think this is reasonable. And
Well,
a good thing.
let's find out how the council feels
Okay.
on that. I would appreciate,
I've been waiting. I just want to say one thing. Somehow my one thing, I'm trying to be really fast so that I don't get squelched anymore. I wanted to say that I appreciate Dan's position on this, not about the funding, but I have also been very vocal in the support of the performing arts, and so I would just like to see that occur. The Emerge contract was increased, but it wasn't for performing arts, and this is not for performing arts, and we've been specific in saying performing arts. So this just brought to the surface that we'd like to see that. I personally, as a council member, would like to see that Arts Council address that. Thank you.
So so you're saying that the performing arts has got nothing from the Arts Commission?
No, that was ARPA. They got grants at one point, a grant, but no.
I would turn to Troy. They have received,
Thousands of dollars during that period of time when the COVID money was out there, and
But
we
that
did
was-
multiple grants.
But that was not our Arts Commission funding. That was one-time money to keep shuttered ARPA money. It was not money that we normally focus to it, and it was a project that I pushed forward to keep them from not going out of business during COVID. So I would just say that's been the only thing that
Beef it up.
they have. So I just would like to see them address it.
somebody want to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion to establish the Coeur d'Alene Poet Laureate Program funded through the Arts Commission funds.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Before we have further discussion, Christie, I agree with you. Poetry's really hard. I have one favorite poem, though. It was about 85. I was a school principal over at Otis Orchards, and these two little giggling fifth graders came in and gave me a poem, and it said, "Roses are red, violets are blue, sugar is sweat, and so are you." Will the clerk take the roll, please?
Wood,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Miller,
Aye.
McEvers, Gookin,
No.
English,
Yes.
Motion carries.
You guys are going
Now,
to be
Woody?
flooded with poems.
Adjourn?
Oh, please. Move to adjourn, sorry.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor respond with aye.
Aye.
Opposed with nay. Motion carries. We are adjourned.
Well, I